history already on the Unity Church? Because the Unity and the Congregational met together with the same building originally, that church sat just 1/2 mile to the east on the south side, where you see the evergreen shelter belt in that corner. That's where they originally put it. And that was on some of Peter Shoppert's land. He gave 3 acres in that corner for the site for the church. There came that, okay, let's get this right. We started out, those that came here, as Steve said already, the Stearns, the Myers, and the Shopperts all came from the Crimea. Now, the other ones, most of the other ones here are from South Russia, Johannesthal, or that area also. But those 3 for sure came from the Crimea, which is a little different. When they came, they stayed with the Hoovers, where the Heilbronn church would be at. And then they came out and they staked their claims out this direction. Okay, now, much the same as the Odessa church, the first missionary pastor that came out here was John F. Dosher.
Desher. It's Desher.
Desher? Okay.
He was my great-great-grandfather.
Okay, let's get it right to start with, right? Okay, he came in 1875, and he came from Fort Dodge, Iowa. He originally started in Yankton, but eventually, later on he came to Menno. In one of Pastor Dosher's communications, he informed the mission board that he was conducting services at 26 preaching stations, scattered in 8 counties: Union, Yankton, Lincoln, Minnehaha, Turner, Hutchinson, Bonham, and Douglas. And he would hold services every 4 to 6 weeks in some places. Pastor Dosher, I'll get this right, I call it Dosher, I'm saying it wrong already. Desher. Pastor Desher was not able to serve in Dakota Territory very long, as he was called by the Commission of the Synodical Conference. Now, he served the Missouri Lutheran Synod originally. And in 1877, this was 1875 when he first came here, okay? In 1877, he was sent to work among the Negroes in the southern states as a missionary. He was replaced by Pastor Melcher, who came in 1878, and he lived actually in Centerville. And through some of Melcher's records, he tells of all the churches or all the preaching places that he served. It begins with Heilbronn, which had 18 members, Friedenthal, which had 6 members, Salem, which had, this is the members and their families, 16 members. Salem, that would have been south of Freeman. DeQuast, which I would guess was just a family, probably met in a house. Marion Junction, Menno, Wolf Creek, which is here, which had 17 members at that time, which would have included the congregational members that early. Naden's, which was Centerville, that's where he was stationed out of. Hoff's Farm had 5 members. Eichmeyer had 13 members. Wall Lake had 33 members. Frieden's had 15 members. Yankton had 5. Rosenberg, they don't tell us how many members. Schmidt-Gall had 13. Youngerman had 5. Schaefer had 3. Keitzman had 16. Robbie had 21. Eisenbraun had 12. Leichner had 10. Mueller's had 4. And Link had 7. So he served a lot of different sites at that time. Now, as Steve had mentioned, they had Missouri ministers have, or Missouri Synod has a strict rule that their ministers cannot share a pulpit with a different denomination. That worked for a while, in the early years, but it came to be a falling out, and they split. And like Steve said, they moved. Peter Shopper bought the building, and they moved it a mile west. And the Lutherans went back to meeting in their homes for about 2 years. So around 1890, or they organized as a Missouri Lutheran Synod in the late 1880s after they split, and John Desher came back to southeastern South Dakota. But when he came back, he was representing the Lutheran Synod of Ohio. He was no longer a Missouri Lutheran minister. He came around and he started visiting his churches that he had been ministering earlier. And Wolf Creek here, or which became Unity, was one of those. There were a couple very heated discussions between the Missouri Synod ministers and Reverend Desher, and the Unity congregation decided to follow Pastor Desher, and they joined the Ohio Synod. So Pastor John F. Desher organized the Evangelical Lutheran Unity Congregation of Wolf Creek in 1890. That's about 15 years after they settled here. So, we have, in 1890, the Lord's Supper was observed on the fourth Sunday of Advent in 1890 at the Unity Congregation in Wolf Creek. Those communing were John Schramm, Rosina Meyer, John Mettler, Katharina Mettler, Fred Buchman, Friederike Buchman, Henry Buchman, Katharina Buchman, Fred Meyer, Dorothy Meyer, Joseph Bauer, Rosina Meyer, Fred Muchoknaus, Katharina Muchoknaus, Henry Meyer, Dorothy Meyer, Alex Meyer, Maria Buchman, Adolf Meyer, Rosina Muchoknaus, and Regina Buchman, Jacob Horn, Luther Mettler, Jacob Mettler, John Mettler, Rosina Horn, his wife, Rosina Meyer, Adolf Meyer, and Elizabeth Horn. So, those folks, these 6 men are considered the founders of Unity Lutheran Church. Frederick Buchman. Frederick Buchman is buried right here. Frederick and his wife. They lived just 1 mile east on the north side of the road. Jacob Horn is right here, and his wife. They lived about 2 miles to the northwest on the Clayton Road. Frederick Meyer homesteaded 3/4 mile west of here on the south side of the road. We are standing on his property. He donated this site for the church. Henry Meyer is his father. He's right there at this larger top stone, and Fred Meyer is behind him. Henry Meyer built the sod house that sometimes is called the Rademacher House. That's in the Wolf Creek, about 2 miles south of here. Matt Meyer is a son, another son, and he homesteaded a mile north, but he later moved to Bridgewater and had a bank in Bridgewater. John Mettler. John Mettler is not buried here, but he lives, the Buchmans, a mile over, John Metler was on the north side of the Boofmans on the Wolf Creek. John Metler, there's a kind of a hump right here with no stones on it. John Metler and his wife have 3 children buried there. They're all, we don't know their ages, but we're 2 boys and a girl. We're guessing there was probably between 8 and 12 years old. So I'm guessing they all probably died from the same problem. Now, in later history, that if you were at the meeting with Dan earlier, you were in the Unity Lutheran Church. That's set in about the middle of the parking lot here. And they had, through the years, that they had a small building. After the split, they made a small building in about 1910. It was very small. One of the old gals, when the 100th anniversary was here, there was one of the old gals still alive, and they interviewed her and they asked her what she could remember. Well, she ended up playing the organ in that small building, and she says how they had a burial, a death, and they had a funeral. And there were so many people, they moved the organ out onto the steps of the building, and they had the funeral outside. So they did that. They had that building for close to 30 years, I believe. In 1923, they decided to build a new building, and that's the building that's in Menno at the Power Show site now. That building cost a little over $6,000 to build at that time. One story that Frida Nuss used to say, because she was a member here, she grew up here. She says they had the building up and they had set the day for the dedication, the Sunday for the dedication. And it came that Saturday, late Saturday, they didn't have any pews yet. So they didn't know what they were going to do the next day. Well, late that evening, they got a call from Bridgewater. The pews came in at the depot in Bridgewater. So there was a couple of these guys. This was in the late or early 20s. They had Model T trucks. So they took off to Bridgewater that evening yet to load up these pews and bring them back. And they had a crew of men here when they got back, and they worked all night, but they put the pews together and carried them into the church building, so they had pews for the next day. Now, the church flourished through the years, but like any church, it had its splits, so a number of times through the years. But finally in 1996, or let's go back a little bit, 1990, they organized in 1890, so in 1990, they actually had a 100th celebration. And we put up a huge tent on the east side of the building, so between the church and the tent, it reached almost to the road. And I know we had a catered meal, and we served like 450 meals that time for that. And past ministers came and talked. But then in 1996, we did this all over again when they decided to close the building, close the congregation. And that time, we set up the same tent in the same place, and the church paid for all the meals and everything for anybody that wanted to come that day for that final service. And it was decided, it was about the same time that the Menno Power Show was starting. So it was brought up, well, we could save the building if we gave it to the Power Show to use. And it was offered there, and they accepted. And I believe the church paid for most of the moving expense. The moving expense was just as much as what it cost to build it, 100 years before. So I don't want to take any more of your time. If you got folks around a little, if you have any questions, you just...
It faced south, right?
Yes, the door was to the south, yes, the one that sat here, yep.